And we're back, and we're on number 3, and I believe number 3 is the different discoveries that we found in a narrow and broad context. You want to go ahead and lead off on that?
Sure. One of the key points that I picked up from our readings and our videos and everything that we've done for this class so far is that it's just not the parents' responsibility to keep their kids engaged in their children's education, but that responsibility belongs to us, of course, but the community too. And we have to work together as a cohesive unit for our children's optimal success in our schools. And in addition, parents need to stay engaged in their children's education from preschool all the way up to even past high school education to make sure that their children maximize their education as they go through life. And in our reading from Beyond Random Acts, the authors of that document said that currently the family involvement doesn't quite match up with the latest trends in education reform, and the teachers have the tendency to treat families and parents as bystanders rather than as their partners. And we educators also have the tendency to overlook the parents' strength and their capacity to even transform public education. And you know, I regularly see the impact on students whose parents who do not involve themselves in their children's education. These students are the ones, like I'd mentioned earlier, they don't take their education as seriously as the students who do have parents who are involved. And the students whose parents aren't involved are the ones that do have the absence rates. They do have the lower grades, and they do have lower standardized test scores. And perhaps if we're, as educators, we show parents that we're willing to listen to them and work with them, fewer students would just suffer less academically.
Yeah. That you're talking about the community stuff. Nagoya in our other class really talks about this idea of social capital and building civic communities and concern with that. And there's a giant thing about between parents exerting influence, you know, the different social networks to make change versus the community building up and making things available, like tutoring, like La Puerta you talked about earlier. And additionally, you know, just providing stuff like welfare and basic healthcare, stuff like that. So that's really awesome, just building off that. And, you know, in the narrow sense for me, I think one of the things we talked about is, you know, how exactly can we get the non-documented immigrant families involved in the importance of pre-K education. I know that a lot of them may be scared to seek out help, to go and try and find this, to go to the school itself, especially if they have limited English skills. If we don't have a lot of Latino community activists or just individuals that are looking out for them, how are we going to get them involved in that stuff?
Exactly. You know, it's interesting you say that because one of my readings that I did actually talked about, you know, how you may not think that Latino families don't want to get involved because there's, you know, they just, maybe they're not interested in their children's education or the language barrier is there. But really, one of the readings that I did said they're actually very interested in getting involved in their children's education. And especially with the Mexican families, they really, really do value education, but they're just afraid. And like you had said earlier, no, they're afraid to go to the school in case there is a seatbelt check. They're afraid to talk to the parents because they're afraid they're not going to understand everything. So those limitations are actually getting in the way of them getting involved, and they really want to. And it's a misconception for a lot of teachers. They're like, oh, my Hispanic families, they don't care. They just don't want to get involved. It's like, well, no, there are a lot of other factors that come into play. They actually do care, but they're too scared to get involved.
I mean, they do a lot more in some kids. They show up. They show up.
Exactly.
And then a lot of them, you see a lot of the 17, 18-year-olds are still in school because they value it. When they legally could drop out at the age of 18, but they still come to school.
I had a 20-year-old graduate 2 years ago.
That's awesome.
And she was just not prouder. I think she's at Ivy Tech right now, and she said she was going to try and go to IU and get either a nursing degree or something in the medical field.
That's awesome.
I'm proud of her because the medical field needs more people like her because she'll be able to speak the language and she'll be able to help more people.
And she cares, obviously.
Exactly. So
another narrow thing I had was, again, how do we get more minority families involved in school activities? I think we talked about this. Twitter, building bridges, you know, just using social capital and community concern. And then that leads me to how do we build that bridge and make that gap smaller, like you said earlier with our questions. So I really liked when we talked before this that you and I hit a lot of topics that are on the same foot. And then for my large one, and then we'll hit over to you, was I noticed from my research that it's not just a U.S. problem.
Right.
New Zealand, UK, South Africa, non-English speaking countries are having the exact same issues we are, especially with family involvement and getting minority families involved. In New Zealand, it's the Maori. For us, it's Latinos, Native Americans, African Americans, Asian Americans, the whole 9 yards. So it's not a U.S. problem. It's a global problem
Right.
that there hasn't been a lot of, global research on, or just, working to find a common ground pan-globally.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I kind of came to the realization too when I was doing my personal journey and everything, I kind of came to the conclusion, you know what? No matter what, you're not going to have 100% parental involvement 100% of the time.
Oh, yeah.
It's just unrealistic to think that. And it's like I said, you've got your parents who absolutely have to work, where they're choosing between, hey, I got to keep a roof over my head, versus, oh, I'm going to come to my child's parent-teacher conference, or I can't pay my cell phone bill this month, so, any calls that I get, I'm not going to get because I've got to buy food. So, we have to realize as educators that, there are some things that are going on in our students' lives and their families' lives that are actually bigger than school itself. Even though we would love to have 100% involvement, we got to make sure that these kids and their families survive.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like my big picture takeaway from
That's awesome.
that. So
Then we're on to 4, right? Mm-hmm. So classes, in this class, what's changed your thinking at all in this class? Or have you, had any major, rethinking or realizations from your readings or anything like that?
Well, there are a couple things. I mean, you can just go on, but the main thing that sticks out that, not all parents who are not involved in their children's education, it's not that they don't care. It's like I said, there may be other things that are going on that really are the biggest hurdle to what they need to do in order to get involved. Mm-hmm. We've talked about language barrier. We've talked about financial barriers. We've talked about some parents who are incarcerated, some parents who are just absolutely absent and we don't know where they are. Mm-hmm. We have parents who have passed away. We have all those different family dynamics that are affecting our kids. And this class has made me realize that, it's not just the kid. There's probably something else going on at home that, that I have no control over and they have no control over. Mm-hmm. And, we just have to make the best with what we have.
That's really
and
good.
Just reach out, say, hey, I don't know what's going on. If you want to talk to me, that's great. Or if you need to talk to me, somebody else, here are some resources. But, just kind of keep me in the loop as to what's going on. I'll work with you. Mm-hmm. And the way I see it is I teach an elective class. I want these kids to pass their course.
Yeah.
And is my class important? Absolutely. But I'm like, you know what? Take care of the stuff you need to take care of so you can graduate. I can always work something out with you. Yeah. And the kids tend to be very appreciative of that, especially, if they're taking care of younger siblings, if they have a sick parent or a grandparent. And they really tend to be very appreciative of that.
I mean, as long as you show that you respect them, they respect
Mm-hmm.
their time, and you act professional and role modelish in your classroom, they're going to respond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I haven't had any massive light bulb, Ben Franklin lightning bolt moments, mm-hmm. but I have had a couple things that maybe, more apt to certain things. I know the readings and talking and the forum posts have made me a lot more apt to realize how important culture is.
Right.
How, Latino culture is really centric around family first. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have a lot of family decisions before school or anything else.
And extended family comes to play with that, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have a lot of aunts and uncles that eventually take roles that the mom and dad can't. I've noticed that, too.
And godparents, they play a role. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the Latino families, their grandparents actually live in the household. Yeah. Their immediate family is a lot bigger than the, quote, traditional mm-hmm. family unit. So...
and then my other one is just, again, being more apt to, take culture into effect when I'm trying to get in touch with families at home. Again, are they working? Do I know the language enough to speak to them? Is there a reason why they're not picking up the phone? Just not for the fact I can't get to them, they don't care. There may be a reason why they're not picking up the phone. It's the big thing, I know why. And that class has really knocked that in for me. So, any unanswered questions, Amy?
Yeah, I've got 4. These are the ones that are... after we've done everything, we've done our readings, we've done our videos, we've done forum posts and everything. I wonder if these questions are going to be addressed in our next session. So here's some that I have. So the first question that I have are, what are some of the ways that we can maximize parental involvement and engagement in schools in low-income